After over 20 years of working in the comic book industry, I've decided to embark on a new adventure. Join me as I explore the strange and unusual, doing everything from sharing my favorite books, comics, and horror movies, to traveling to abandoned spaces, horror-themed bars and restaurants, and all sorts of spooky spots. Welcome to Curious Haunts. I'm your host, Jeremy Haun. I was walking out to the studio just after dark the other night. It had been hot all week, but it was a beautiful evening. I stood there in the backyard for a moment enjoying the stillness when I caught a little bit of light out of the corner of my eye. And then another. And another. I hadn't seen lightning bugs in a while. Even here in the city, they seemed more common. I always loved the dance of the lightning bugs as a kid on my grandparents' farm. On summer nights, the fields seemed to swarm with them. It was beautiful. My youngest son came out, and we stood there watching them for a while, flashing their intermittent, lovely glow. Owen mentioned that he'd been reading about lightning bug populations declining. And while lightning bugs aren't yet close to the point of extinction, thanks to the loss of habitat, pesticide use, and global warming, there's a significant chance that later generations will not get to see their beautiful dance. As we stood there watching, I had a memory of an episode of a TV show I'd seen as a kid. It was a vague memory, something I hadn't thought about in forever. An old man and a boy in a graveyard, and lightning bugs. I remembered it being a beautiful moment, but also one that scared me. After a bit, I made my way into the studio and looked up that TV show. It was episode 15 of the 1985 relaunch of The Twilight Zone. The episode was called Monsters. As far as I could tell, like too many things, the episode isn't available for rent or streaming on any of the services right now. I was able to watch it on YouTube, which isn't my first choice, but it was good enough. The episode features a horror-loving young boy who's home for the summer. He befriends an old man, played by Ralph Bellamy. It's a story about monsters and an old man coming home to die. It's a bit of 80s sappy, but there's something special about it. Bellamy has this line in the graveyard when he shows the boy the lightning bugs. When everything else grows hazy, try to hold on to this good thing. I didn't remember the line from when I was a kid, but hearing it now, it resonated with me. The episode ends with a dark hint of a twist, like most of the Twilight Zone stories. It terrified me as an 11-year-old kid, and it played well all these years later. I'm glad I walked out and saw those lightning bugs. I'm glad it made me think of monsters. I'm not always sure we're on a good trajectory as humankind. Still, I hope that later generations do get to see the beautiful dance of the lightning bugs. And in the meantime, I'm going to think of that line. When everything else grows hazy, try to hold on to this one good thing. And so today, on Curious Haunts, we're headed back for part 2 of our visit to Kansas City, Missouri. I'm also going to look at a comic series from a couple of dear friends. One of them just happens to live in Kansas City. I'm also going to share a Blu-ray collector's edition of a film that takes a fresh look at a classic horror genre. But first, let's have a drink. And welcome back to the catacombs of the Coroner Bar Annex. It's the heat of the summer here in the Midwest, but things are nice and cool down here in our exclusive speakeasy hideaway. I'm back with my fancy new apron, and we're ready to make a drink. This week, I wanted to make another classic cocktail for you all. Something that's tasty and refreshing on those hot summer days, or really any time at all. My perfect margarita. Most places here in the Midwest, and pretty much everywhere, make their margaritas using a mix. And look, while I understand kitchen and bar efficiency, margarita mix is just horrible. Today, I'm going to show you how simple and absolutely delicious a fresh ingredient margarita can be. So take that jug of mix, kick it into the nearest dumpster, and let's do this the right way. We're using simple ingredients here. That's the key. And since we're probably having this drink with some friends, it's smart to do it with a bit of prep work beforehand. Do yourself a favor and squeeze and bottle your own lime juice beforehand. I usually do 8 ounces at a time and put it in these handy dandy squeeze bottles. You're also going to want to prepare your simple syrup beforehand. Once you've done that little bit of prep work, you're good to go, and honestly, have most of what's in that fluorescent green jug of mix. Now, let's take out our trusty shaker. I'm using my elevated craft shaker here because I love the built-in measuring cap and insulated body. It's also a larger size, so you can do a nice batch for you and a couple of friends. Today, I'm going to stick with a single serving, but you can adjust this recipe up just as much as you'd like. First off, we're going to start with our spirits. I use a split base, half Blanco tequila, half Mezcal. You can do whatever you want on the tequila. If you prefer reposado or añejo tequila, that'll be absolutely delicious. I tend to go with a Blanco or maybe reposado for a mixed drink like this though. I'll save the añejo for sipping. I'm going to take an ounce of this tequila and add it to the shaker. Today, I'm using Espolon Tequila Blanco because it's tasty and a heck of a deal on it. Then, I'm going to add an ounce of Mezcal to this shaker as well. I'm using Madre Espadin here. I really love the whole Madre line. Now, you can go just tequila here, or Mezcal for that matter. Some people don't care for the complex, smoky flavor of Mezcal. I absolutely love it. Next up, we're going to add a full ounce of our pre-squeezed and bottled lime juice to the shaker. Just like that. And then we'll follow it up with a half ounce of Cointreau. It's my personal favorite of orange liqueurs. Then we're going to go in with another 1/4 ounce of our simple syrup, handy dandy squeeze bottle. Okay, there we go. And we're going to follow that up with the same amount, another 1/4 ounce of agave nectar. There we go. You can go with either one on this. I'm just bougie and like the varied complex flavors that the two sweets add. I've never been a salt on the rim guy with margaritas. It's just a bit too much for me. But I want that pop of flavor that's quintessential to a good margarita. So it should come as no surprise that I'm going to come in with 3 drops of my saline to really bring everything together. Now, once we've built our cocktail, we'll throw a few ice cubes in the shaker and shake the hell out of this thing until it's good, ice cold, and frothy. And once that's done, we're going to take and fill a rocks glass with crushed or pebble ice. I've got some lovely pebble ice here in the Coroner Bar, so I'm going to use that. Then we'll take and pour our cocktail into the glass. And then we'll garnish it with a nice lime wheel. And there you have it, the perfect margarita. That is delicious. Now that we've got ourselves a tasty beverage, let's head back to the auditorium and see all the spooky goodness we've got for you today. After the last episode, I officially decided it was time to reorganize some of my various collections. I'm starting with the ones that have really gotten out of hand. My movie collection of DVDs, Blu-ray, and 4K releases, and my library of books were first on the list. The collection of bottles in the Coroner Bar could use a bit of work too. Of course, the second I start reorganizing, I find a pile of stuff that I don't want to watch or read again. Not that that's a bad thing. Now, the comic book industry is a relatively small, close-knit community. Most of us know each other at least a bit. There are several comics creator hub cities throughout the United States. Places like New York, LA, Chicago, or even Portland, like you'd expect. But one that might surprise you is right here in the Midwest, in Kansas City. Over the past 20 years, the Kansas City area has become one of the biggest collectives of talent in the country. with everyone from Jason Aaron and Richard Corbin to Matt Fraction and Tony Moore living in the area at one time or another. Today I wanted to focus on a special story by one of my favorite people, Scotty Young. The story is The Me You Love in the Dark. It's a beautifully haunting story about longing, loneliness, love, and obsession. It's the story of Ro, an artist who moves into a beautiful old house somewhere in Middle America, looking to paint, seeking her muse. The thing she finds there in that house, in a lot of ways, is exactly that, but at a cost. Scotty's creative partner on The Me You Love in the Dark is another one of my favorite people, the absolutely brilliant artist Jorge Corona. Scotty and Jorge have worked together on several projects over the years, each one a little different, each exploring something special. I love seeing Scotty and Jorge doing horror. It's still very much their kind of thing, but The Me You Love in the Dark is definitely a horror story. There's a good chance if you're a comics reader, you're already familiar with Scotty's work. But if you're not, The Me You Love in the Dark is a fantastic entry point to his work. The series came out in 2022 from Image Comics, and this collection should be available pretty much anywhere you get your comics. The Me You Love in the Dark is a beautiful, haunting story. Next up, though, we're going to go in a completely different direction. The absolutely brutal gore-fest Blu-ray Collector's Edition of In a Violent Nature. I love the titles of both of today's bits of physical media. Both are perfect and evocative. I first heard about In a Violent Nature over a year before it hit theaters. Horror fans are always looking for the next big thing, and word circulated fast about this new film with a great title and gore that had people running out of screenings. It seemed familiar, a throwback to all those great films of the 80s, but with a new twist. In a Violent Nature was released theatrically from IFC Films on May 23, 2024, and on Shudder on Friday, September 13th, which was a good nod. The boys and I managed to catch the movie at a midnight showing, and I'm glad we did. The plot of In a Violent Nature is simple. A group of friends find a locket hanging in an old fire tower and accidentally awaken an unstoppable killing force. At its heart, it's a story we've seen before, but writer-director Chris Nash took that and used it to his advantage. Using incredibly long takes, no score, and presenting almost everything in the film from the point of view of the killer created a uniquely visceral and unsettling experience. Now, as I've said, I watch a lot of horror movies. So when In a Violent Nature was called one of the most disturbing and gory films of the decade, I was expecting to be absolutely shocked. And while there are some pretty disturbing scenes, it really comes down to one over-the-top brutal moment. It is horrible, almost so much that it kind of unbalances the gore in the rest of the film. Now, I'm not saying that everything should have been as graphic as that one scene. I honestly think that would have been too much, and people would shut down. But I'm going to have to think about where this falls in the goriest films of the decade scale. The In a Violent Nature Collector's Edition is a nice 2-disc set. It has over 3 hours of bonus features, including behind-the-scenes footage, a failed attempt at filming that brutal scene, a Sundance video diary, and 2 commentaries, one with the production and cast members, and another technical commentary diving into how they pulled off making the film such a visceral experience. If you're a fan of slasher films, check out In a Violent Nature. It's a fun twist on a genre we all know and love. This 2-disc collector's edition is available at several online retailers. I suggest Orbit DVD out of Asheville, North Carolina, because it's a great spot and Asheville deserves a little love. And now, I'd like to invite you on another little trip, where I visit a series of spooky, strange, and delightful places that inspire and fascinate me. I eat, I drink, I seek out the weird and wonderful. And today, we're headed back to Kansas City, Missouri, for part 2 of a look at the spookier side of the heart of the Midwest. I set out in February to see the spookier side of Kansas City. I visited an old abandoned workhouse prison, stopped by one of my favorite boutique bottle shops, and got a tour through the history of the Kansas City Union Station Massacre with my pal, Andy Parks. And I was all set for more. But the weather had other plans. As disappointed as I was to have to head back home in order to beat a Midwestern winter storm, I knew I'd be back soon for Planet Comic Con and part 2 of the Kansas City excursion. It's become a bit of a tradition that one or both of my boys makes the trip up to Kansas City with me for Planet Comic Con. It's our local comic book convention, and they've been taking a couple extra days off and tagging along on the adventure their whole lives. This year, Ethan couldn't make it because of his work schedule, so it was just me and Owen heading up that way. So we packed up the car and headed north. Along the way, we stopped to explore the old Southwestern Bell Telephone Company station just outside of Fort Scott, Kansas. It's a building that's always fascinated me. I'd seen it for years on trips to Kansas City along Highway 69, always wondering what it was. An old school? A power station? It was definitely long abandoned, and had been for years. On the way to Kansas City the month before, for part 1 of the Kansas City excursion, I noticed that it stood open and made a note to take a peek sometime soon. So on the way up, we decided to take a look around. It's important to note that our family does a lot of work restoring old buildings. So on top of being careful exploring spaces, we also know what to look for and be wary of. And even in rough shape, while you always need to be cautious, solid concrete construction like the station tend to be safer than old wooden structures. Built in 1930, during the height of the Bell Telephone Empire, the Fort Scott Bell Company station was in service until sometime in 1978, and it has been vacant since. Over the years, the station has had all sorts of visitors. Today, it definitely seems like something out of a horror movie. And while the bones of the building are still in remarkably good shape, I'm not sure if we're ever going to see it restored. We made our way through the 2 floors and headed back out. We needed to make it up to the convention center in time to get set up for the weekend. So we set off across eastern Kansas, and before long, found ourselves in downtown Kansas City. We arrived at Kansas City's absolutely vast downtown convention center, Bartle Hall, and got in the queue for load-in. Before long, we made our way inside. Owen has been helping me set up for years, and he's great at it. We got set up in Artist Alley in no time, and then made our way over to the convention hotel, the Lowe's, and got checked in. It's a great spot with an amazing view over downtown. We dropped off our stuff, and then it was time to explore. We walked downtown to the Crossroads Arts District, to one of my favorite spots, Oracle Natural Science Shop. Alessandra and her small team have been dedicated to bringing ethically and sustainably sourced taxidermy and specimens to Kansas City since 2013. I love stopping in, checking out their beautifully curated collection of bones, minerals, bugs, and other fascinations. I picked up a couple of special items for my collection, hoped that a couple more might still be there next time I'm back in town, and then it was time for a different kind of treat. Christopher Elbow Chocolates. Christopher Elbow has been Kansas City's premier chocolatier, producing handcrafted chocolates and bonbons since 2003. Our family doesn't do a lot of candy, but Christopher Elbow Chocolates may be our one exception. We almost always order their Halloween boxes and advent calendars, and while we were downtown, dropped by to bring a box of treats home, and have one ourselves for the road. I went with lemon, which might be one of the best things I've ever eaten. After our snack, Owen and I bopped into Josie Records to check out their selection of vinyl and CDs. It's a great spot, and much to my amusement, Owen found a couple of things he needed for his growing CD collection. As someone that had hundreds of CDs whenever I was his age, it's funny to see him circling back to things on disc. We headed back to the hotel, drop off our finds, and get ready for dinner. We were meeting friends for dinner at a KC barbecue institution, Fiorella's Jack Stack. We can't really talk barbecue without it turning into a whole thing. Sides are drawn, battles on sauces and techniques are fought, and that's just exhausting. We were out at a spot we like, with friends we love, and that's the thing that matters. As I've said a few times, the comic book industry is a small community. I've known Seth Peck, Kevin Mellon, and Tony Moore for the better part of 25 years now. Over those years, with all the changes and jobs in life, they're dear to me. We don't get together often enough, so a pre-con barbecue dinner is a special thing. Getting to have Owen along made it all the better. We wrapped up early that night. It had been a long day, and we had a convention to get to in the morning. I met with fans, signed books, and caught up with old friends. Planet is a special convention, started in 1999 by Chris Jackson. It's my local show. I've been going to it for over 20 years now, and in a lot of ways, Planet Comic Con is where I got my start in comics. It's where I met Jim Valentino, which led me to working with Image Comics. Over the years, I've made so many friends there, creators, staff, and fans alike. It was great to get to see so many of those people over the course of the weekend. On Saturday, I had the chance to sit on a horror comics panel called Capturing the Nightmare on the Page with my pals, masters of comic book horror, Cullen Bunn and Tony Moore. We talked about horror's influence on us and the stories we tell. There's always this similarity to the origin stories of horror creators, something simple but connective that leads us to tell the kinds of strange tales that we do. I've got some footage from that panel. Even though it's not all of it, I'll have to look into posting it on here at some point soon. Lori and a friend made their way to Kansas City and joined us on Saturday evening for the Ignition Press dinner. It was our return to Corvino. It's kind of a requirement. The next day, we wrapped up Planet Comic Con. Owen helped me tear down my booth and get everything loaded up to take home. He's good help and just the best travel buddy. After we got everything loaded up and snagged a bite to eat at the amazing dumpling spot, Chewology, Owen and the rest of the crew made their way home. I still had some spooky exploring to do after all. Spring was here, and there was absolutely no snow in sight. Right around that time, I got a text from my pal, Andy Parks. You'll remember him from last episode, where he gave me a tour of Union Station, sharing the history of the Kansas City Massacre. Andy was headed to the Kansas City classic spot, Harry's Country Club, for their Sunday special deal, 40% off pours from their rare bottle medicine cabinet. Now that is a deal I can't resist. Harry Murphy opened Harry's Country Club in 2006. It's a perfect spot with a throwback honky-tonk atmosphere, popular patio, and an absolutely fantastic selection of bottles. After a long convention talking to people, a nice drink or two with Andy is just the perfect way to wrap things up. We chatted, laughed, and talked about the weekend at the show. But before long, we sensibly called it a night, and I made my way back to the Lowe's. I needed the rest. I woke up early the next morning. A bit too early. I had plans later, but took advantage of the morning to do, well, a whole lot of nothing. Which, if I'm being honest, is a rare treat. But just after noon, I made my way down to the lobby to meet up with my pals, Kevin Mellon and Jason Hurley. Mellon is a comic book writer and artist who also worked in animation on shows like Archer and Hit Monkey. Hurley is my longtime friend and co-creator of the comic series The Beauty. They graciously agreed to join me on the day's adventures. We were making our way to an absolute wonder of a place, Subtropolis. Just north of the Missouri River is one of the most vast and fascinating spaces I've had the chance to visit. So what is Subtropolis? It's a 55 million square foot underground business complex carved deep into a huge deposit of 270 million year old limestone. Some areas of the bunker facility are up to 160 feet beneath the surface. But there are rumors that some parts go much, much deeper than that. Mellon, Hurley, and I drove into Subtropolis. As with most places, as long as you're safe and respectful, you can visit the complex. We drove through, stopping every once in a while to check the different areas out. The second we stepped foot inside, I couldn't stop thinking about George Romero's 1985 classic, Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead is the one where the team of scientists are bunkered with a group of soldiers in an old missile silo. As with all those films, the problem isn't necessarily the zombies. It's the people. While it wasn't the most popular of the original Dead films, Day was always my favorite. The underground bunker scenes from the film were shot in a former mineshaft turned storage facility, just outside of Waupun, Pennsylvania. Much like Subtropolis. As we got out and looked around, I couldn't help but think of the possible hordes of zombies wandering somewhere out there in the dark, just beyond the pillars. And even though we spent over an hour driving through and exploring Subtropolis, I don't think we even came close to seeing more than a fraction of the 1,260-acre space. Everywhere we looked, there was another road, another path, another hint of light, far, far in the distance. And maybe, just maybe, the sound of a voice, somewhere out there. Hello? Hello? And while part of me wanted to stay and see more, we had other spots to explore. So we packed up and made our drive out of Subtropolis. I'll definitely have to come back at some point. There's just so much to see, so much to explore. On the way back into the city, Mellon suggested we make an unplanned stop at the strangely now abandoned 1.6 million square foot former Cerner Continuous Campus. As we pulled up to the vast space, I was once again reminded of the empty streets of Day of the Dead and every post-apocalyptic film I've ever seen. I got out, walked around a bit, keenly aware that security, just doing their jobs, might come and usher us along at any moment. The campus, along with another in the area, was closed after Cerner was acquired by the tech Goliath, the Oracle Corporation, in 2022. Now it just sits as a strange reminder of what can easily happen to every single grand thing we build when the world moves on. As much as I wanted to stay and explore, we decided it was best to not push our luck. And besides, I was in the mood for a donut. Luckily, we were just a few minutes away from arguably the best donut spot in all of Kansas City, Donut King. We grabbed a snack and then made our way back to the Lowe's. Melon had a meeting he needed to get to, so he dropped me and Hurley off to continue our exploring, and we all agreed to meet again later for dinner and drinks. Back at the Lowe's, Hurley and I got to talking about the convention center and the recent redevelopment of the Auditorium Plaza parking garage beneath Bartle Hall and much of the surrounding area. In years past, we'd stay at the Marriott or Hotel Phillips during Planet Comic Con. All those hotels downtown were connected by a series of parking garages and tunnels that eventually led to Bartle Hall. For years, as the boys grew up, we'd haul all of our stuff for setup and teardown at the convention using those tunnels. As with most strange places, they fascinated me. With the redevelopment of the plaza, a lot of that had changed. Most of the tunnels between the hotels, buildings, and the convention center had been sealed off. But because I'm me, and Hurley's always game to join along on my silly, curious adventures, I wanted to see exactly how sealed off it all was. We walked from the Skyway connecting the Lowe's Hotel back into Bartle Hall. It was weird to see the hall completely empty after Comic-Con weekend, when thousands of creators, retailers, fans, and cosplayers packed out the space. We made our way through and down along the path we'd taken time and time again over the years. And this time, there was absolutely no one around. We walked along the tunnels below Bartle Hall, past the convention offices, and the somewhat strange murals decorating the walls. Just as I suspected, the tunnel connecting Bartle Hall to the walkway to the Marriott was blocked off. We could still access the cool lobby area below the municipal auditorium. I've always loved the space. In spite of walking past it for years, I never really had the opportunity to stop and check it out. I'd thought a lot about what was on the other side of those doors. Maybe a huge performance hall, grand ballroom, or secret subterranean lair. The actual space, we learned, was still vast, but a bit less opulent than I'd imagined. We poked around a bit more before making our way back along the tunnels. On the way back, I stopped to use the restroom, only to find out that with the convention over, the automatic lights weren't set to kick on, which made the space definitely feel like something out of a horror flick. It definitely made using the facilities a little more uncomfortable than usual. That particular necessity accomplished without incident from a spectral force or masked killer, we headed back to the hotel to pick up the car and head to our next location, the Kessler Park Reservoir. Built in 1920 in what was known at the time as North Terrace Park, the reservoir was constructed to better provide water to the northeast and east bottoms districts of Kansas City. Unfortunately, the reservoir almost immediately ran into problems thanks to a mystery leak and serious erosion issues. By just 1926, the troublesome reservoir was drained, and by 1931, declared officially abandoned. Today, the Kessler Park Reservoir still sits abandoned, and fits the unintentional, desolate, post-apocalyptic theme of this episode. But the place is beautiful and strange. A football field-length, graffiti-covered remnant of man's innovation and absolute willingness to abandon it. We walked along the dividing wall and then made our way down into the basin. I thought a lot about places like the reservoir lately, the beauty of urban decay. Part of the magic of places like the old Bell Telephone Station, the Kessler Park Reservoir, and the Kansas City Workhouse from last episode is that they remain here, frozen, neglected, pulled out of time. I both desperately want to see places like this restored, but also love them just the way they are. I stood there for a bit, all in my deep thoughts about abandoned structures, when Hurley reminded me it was time to meet back up with Melon for drinks and then a bite to eat. So we made our way back to the Westport area to the Goat and Rabbit. Melon was already there and had snagged us a nice spot. We enjoyed drinks, laughed, and then made plans for dinner. We were in the mood for burgers. Kansas City is a damn good burger town. Everyone has their favorites. The only thing people argue more about than the best burger is the best barbecue. The Westport Flea Market Bar and Grill. Now, to be clear, the Westport Flea Market isn't actually a flea market anymore. For over 30 years, it's been a Kansas City institution. You order food at the counter and pick it up at the cook's window. From there, you hit the condiment bar for all your pickle needs. And my pickle needs are many. After you get sat down, they swing by and take your drink order. Just remember, the Westport Flea Market is cash only. We enjoyed our burgers and pretty much every bit of fried goodness they had to offer. Is it the best burger in Kansas City? Well, I have thoughts, and definitely need to do more research. Regardless, it's a tasty burger and a great place to enjoy a meal with good friends. While we were there, I found a photo booth. And according to my self-imposed rules, if I see a photo booth, I have to get a photo. The more ridiculous, the better. We rounded out the night with a visit to Melon's studio space and a tour of some of the best late-night watering holes Kansas City has to offer. But by the end, we found ourselves back at Harry's for one last round. It was a great day exploring the stranger side of Kansas City with Melon and Hurley. I'm grateful to get to have such adventures with such good friends. I slept in the next day, which should probably come as no surprise. Even on the road, I have virtual work meetings to attend, so I made my way up, got as presentable as possible, and hopped on my video chat. Just after noon, I made my way back to Bay Boy Sandwiches for another treat. Yes, my friends, even though I visited Bay Boy last episode, they're worth mentioning again. After lunch, I made my way over to the Kansas side of Kansas City to do a bit of shopping at the Lego store. Since they were old enough to do so, my boys and I have built Lego together. It should probably come as no surprise, given the near hoarding tendency with books, movies, and such, but we have a pretty epic collection of Lego. Now for a while, Owen has been asking me for an extra special build. That's right, Barad-dûr from Lord of the Rings. It's an epic build, easily one of the biggest in our collection, but he's a great kid and was a big help at planning it, so I was happy to get it for him. After making my way back for another meeting, it was time to head over to the Kansas City Art Institute to join my pal Cullen Bunn to guest judge the illustration program's Covers and Pages anthology. It was amazing seeing so much up-and-coming talent. Now, judging a competition isn't easy, especially when there's so much new talent involved. In the end, Cullen and I managed to narrow it down to 3 covers that stood out. After we finished, I made my way back to the hotel to meet a buddy for dinner. I had a bit and decided to sit down at the bar and have a drink before walking to the restaurant. While I was sitting there, I got a bit of crushing news. Jim Bray, my college art mentor, had passed away. I needed some time with it. I got a rain check for dinner and just went for a walk. Mentors are a rare thing. I've been lucky in life to find people that change my path at just the right time. Jim was one of those people. I was struggling to find my place in the college art department. I was neither quite a graphic design major nor particularly fine art. I wanted to tell stories. While I think that was a frustration to a lot of professors in my department, Jim understood it for what it was. He encouraged my comics work at a point where some part of me genuinely considered giving up. In a lot of ways, I owe a big part of my career to him. Jim was an amazing talent. His work as an illustrator and painter were a constant inspiration to me. I walked downtown for a couple of hours, thinking about Jim and the effect he and his work had on my own path. I looked at the buildings, the play of shadow on the empty spaces, even within the bustle of Kansas City. I enjoyed the time alone with my thoughts. I eventually made my way back to the hotel, had one more drink, and then turned in for the night. I got up and packed the next morning. It was time to head home. I had a couple of stops to make before heading out. 2 of my favorite spots in town: Oddly Correct Coffee and Elite Comics. Oddly Correct has been a favorite funky little Kansas City coffee shop of mine for over a decade. Part coffee shop, part art collective, Oddly Correct, with its tentacle-themed vibes and perfect pour, just calls to me. It's a great place to sit and work while you enjoy a cup. And while their newer location on Troost is a bit out of the way, I still make a point to stop by at least once or twice while I'm in town. Also, their merch is on point. Fueled by more than enough coffee goodness to last the drive home, I made my way back over to the Kansas side of Kansas City, to Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas to be exact. Without a doubt, Elite Comics is one of my favorite shops in the country. I started visiting Elite over 20 years ago, just as I was breaking into comics. William, the owner, was gracious enough to even host me for my first in-store signing. Elite is a shop where everyone is welcome, and comics are king. William and his crew not only work to support the community, but also go above and beyond to give back to the Kansas City area. With chatting done and books procured, it was time to head back home. I love Kansas City. It's the beating heart of the Midwest, a place that welcomes the strange and unusual, that surprises you with a rich, sometimes troubled history, and hidden wonders if you just know where to look. And there you have it, part 2 of the Kansas City excursion. Now you might be wondering, what's next? Well, it's time, my friends, for the season finale of Curious Haunts. And I can't think of a better way to wrap up the first season of our little journey into the strange and unusual than with a visit to Chicago, Illinois. It's going to be a fantastically spooky time, and I can't wait to share it with all of you. So that's it for episode 10 of Curious Haunts. If you have a weird, wonderful, spooky place you feel like I should visit, please let me know. And if you'd like to join me on this curious and haunting journey, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you know a fellow traveler who, like you, is drawn to the strange and unusual, I'd appreciate you sharing Curious Haunts with them. I'll see you again in 2 weeks for the season finale of Curious Haunts. Cheers.